Old and new gods finally came face to face on episode 5 with Mr. Wednesday playing cat and mouth with Mr. World, Media, and Technical Boy. Will this impair his mission? Will he strike a deal? Hi, I'm Orlando Jones here with Mark Snedeker from Entertainment Weekly.
And tonight we sift through the many layers of American Gods episode 5, Lemon Scented You. And there were a lot of layers. So, here's your official spoiler alert. Once again, we are about to talk about this episode pretty in depth. So if you haven't seen it yet, come back after you've seen it.
The following program.
Modern style.
And to help make sense of it, we are joined by the powerful new gods, Mr. World himself, Crispin Glover, and the man behind the frog skin vaping technical boy, Bruce Langley.
Yeah. Is that
amazing.
the weirdest thing? Like,
That's
what's the weirdest thing Technical Boy does? Is that it?
That's a warm-up. Synthetic toad skins is the entry point. There's just watch this space. There's more.
Do you smoke synthetic toad skin?
I mean, not like I'm addicted. I just do it because if I don't do it, I start going into flop sweats.
Oh,
Yeah, we
real
gotta get
talk.
in on that.
Right,
Yeah,
that's
we
real.
should've
I gotta
done that before this
step my
episode.
game up, actually.
So we're so excited to have you guys here today because we have not yet met the new gods. He's an old god. He's Mr. Nancy. I'm just a human. So I feel like what's the basic level that you need to know about the new gods itself? Are they all bad, or should we know a little more about them?
Well, I think it's important to bear in mind that in this entire universe and world, no one is intrinsically bad. All of the gods have their own reasons for doing what they're doing, and more importantly, all aspects of all of the gods are simple reflections of us as a human species and society. So even the vicious, nasty parts that some may not enjoy, that's just as much as part of the reflection of the mirror as the fluffy, nice bits that you may immediately identify with some of the older gods. So I wouldn't say that they are bad, and would we need to know more about them? Yes, I think that's a hell of a good idea.
Well, so tonight we finally met Mr. World, who is kind of, we've met his underlings. We've met the Technical Boy, and we've met Media, played by Gillian Anderson, who we'll talk about in a sec. Who is Mr. World, though? What kind of brought you to this project? What did you see in this character that you were really into?
I'd worked with Neil Gaiman on Beowulf. He co-wrote that with Roger Avery, and I sat and talked with him. And if you've talked to Neil Gaiman, he's obviously a great person. He's a great writer, but there was something in that, for a lot of different reasons. There was something about the moral aspects of that were particularly important to me. It sounds strange, but it's true.
Well, so if Mr. World is not quite on the nose, we do see that Technical Boy he's the Technical Boy. I mean, were you surprised to learn in this episode that he maybe doesn't have all the autonomy that we sort of thought he did when we first met him?
I found that particularly interesting, actually, more than anything else. There was some initial exploration of Tech Boy's origin story earlier on in the series that didn't make it into the final cut that, knock on wood, we may get to explore a little bit later on in some of the later series. But it tied in very, very nicely into that. So it was more just really, really fun to explore, and some character notes got a long way, particularly about Mr. World and Tech Boy's relationship and how that works. And this strange sort of, hierarchy is not perhaps the right term, but this strange sort of amalgamation of leadership that is the new gods and where they're going, and this semi-unified view, and whether or not all the new gods are completely on the same page or not. In essence, it was just a lot more to play with for the character, which I very, very much enjoyed.
Yeah. And how about those outfits? I mean, can you take any of those away from set?
No, I tried. They tased me a whole bunch, like Bolus. They had Spike Pitts, Poogie things. It was terrible.
Yeah,
but I won with costumes. I mean, like,
you got some great ones.
Every single scene, I got a new one. So not like episode, scene. So new hair, new costume, new everything. They were like, I don't know how many thousands of dollars I was walking around in every day. A lot.
Totally.
But yeah, no, it was amazing. And it's indicative of his nature of the character. He updates as quickly as social trends, as quickly as apps. He changes. Everything is transient. Everything is new. It's indicative of dopamine hits and neurochemistry, and it's indicative of the natures of apps and our relationship to technology. And it was really so much fun to explore that. And I'm looking forward to seeing if it not necessarily inspires, but reflects any upcoming trends. So we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's interesting.
Totally.
One of my favorite things about the difference between the old gods and the new gods is that you guys are not in agreement, and we were in a losing war, so we were in agreement that you're the enemy.
Right.
But you guys are completely not in agreement. I mean, and I get a kick out of the idea that, I mean, when you think about world populations and that's consistently growing, there's a tough decision that has to be made about resources at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So you wonder how that falls into someone like Mr. World, who goes, I know you think I'm the bad guy, but we're not going to have enough resources for everybody.
Yeah.
So someone has to make the tough decisions, and it's just such an interesting set of circumstances to be dealing with amongst the new gods. It's tricky. It's very cool.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is kind of the difference between the approaches to that point of Technical Boy, Mr. World, and media? I mean, all three of them are sort of on the same page, but also have a different sort of stake in what's to come. What's the difference for the three?
I keep getting asked variations of this question, and I just feel like for me to answer it from the point of view of my character, Mr. World, is correct in that I feel like I'm needing to work with everybody. I'm trying to genuinely have a good situation happen. Every person gets to that in a different way. Every character gets to that in a different way. I feel like that's what I'm after.
Yeah. Well, him making the tech boy apologize. I mean, it's
Yeah.
sort of like there's a moral side to Mr. World that's surprising.
I know, it's interesting.
Well, the snot-nosed punk is out of control, obviously, and he sends his faceless
Yeah.
people to beat people unwittingly he doesn't like to mess with. And if you mess with him, he'll mess you up. I mean, he's very gangster.
Well, and I mean, in the metaphor that's in my head, it makes complete sense.
Now, Bruce, what about the tech boy's relationship with media? Because
Yes.
we see him kind of terrified when she shows up as David Bowie. What is that dynamic like?
Well, first of all, she has the gall to use his own technology against him.
Yeah.
So there's that in terms of his entry to that scene. So that's a giant middle finger right there, straight
he
to him.
sees the thing
It's
that-
like, oh, really? Really? So in terms of the sort of nice little religious reference here, the incompatible triad of world, tech boy, and media, there's a strange sort of power struggle going on there, and Tech Boy very much likes to operate on his own agenda, and he's got his own reasons for doing what he's doing. With that said, he also has, for lack of a better term, very human relationships with the other gods that he interacts with. Like, one of the things I've mentioned before is that one of the things I really enjoyed about the character is that the incorporation of a partly artificial mind that literally thinks faster than anything else on the planet, the mind of a deity that is very, very young and has only known worship, just consistently, nothing else, just constantly more, and then a human mind that cannot think that fast because he's born of human belief, and amalgamating those three sort of inward dichotomies into this maelstrom of a character, and then trying to make that consciousness interact. But with that, his interactions with media, it's a constant fight between the logic, how powerful he is as a deity, like good luck trying to convey any media without technology in some way, shape or form. There's a lot to play with there. His relationship, I don't want to give, I'm going to deliberately remain fairly sparse on details on this and just say you will have to wait and see, but I would argue that the new gods have more of their own agendas than initially meets the eye.
Gotcha. I love that.
There's such a battle also just in the modern sense of things between media and technology. You know,
Yes.
you look at what's happening with, FANG, Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, and Google, and how they have data on their side, and the mainstream media business does not have data on its side, and how that juxtaposition it's a very unfriendly
Totally.
marriage right now, and it's
Absolutely.
really interesting to see both how your character, media, and of course Mr. World all come together, because we haven't figured out how to manage those problems ourselves.
And neither have they.
They don't know where they fit in with the old gods. They've figured out where they fit in between each other,
Yes.
right? Because the old gods were new gods at one point, right? So now you guys are the new gods, and you need to
Well,
figure out
it's-
your connection to each other.
It's also why the metaphor is pertinent, because what Neil came up with as that idea is true. There are these actual incongruities that are going on. So that's why it's a good metaphor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I want to ask about working with Jillian. I spoke to her, and she said working with you was a highlight, a true
Oh, good.
highlight. She so enjoyed it.
Yeah.
What do you guys remember about seeing her in that? I feel like Marilyn Monroe was in like a robot contraption the whole day.
Yeah,
Is that right?
yeah.
That's pretty much it, yeah.
So that was the scene that I read first, and just as soon as I read it, I thought, yes,
that
I'm
was
going to do
that was
this.
the first thing you read for this character.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
Yeah. I mean, I just as soon as I read the scene, I said yes. I'm going to do this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly how I felt.
It was so extraordinarily well written.
Well, that about does it for another episode of our American Gods After Show. Orlando and I here would like to bow down to Crispin Glover and Bruce Langley. Thank you guys so much for your insights. And next week, we will have even more revelations from the cast as we examine Episode 6, A Murder of Gods. Oh my God, who gets murdered?
A murder.
That sounds so foreboding. Thank you
does.
for watching. We'll have the scoop next week.